So, call to order for the Municipality of Anchorage Board of Ethics meeting, May 13th, 2015. And please, Lisa.
William Falsey.
Here.
Terrence Kelly.
Here.
Kathleen King will be late. David Nesbitt.
Here.
Keith Silver.
Here.
Also present is Dee Ennis, Deputy Municipal Attorney, Lisa Slusner, Clerk's Office Staff, or Clerk Staff Support, and then we have guests, Assembly Chair Trainee, Assembly Member Honeman, and Assembly Aide Chair Easley. We have a quorum.
What I propose is we'll handle the administrative, the minutes, and then we can address our guests and see how we can help them. So we have the minutes from the previous meeting. Have we had a chance to review those and approve them? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Oh, and that's the meeting minutes, and we also have the agenda. And I'll ask to see if anybody wants to amend the agenda. If not, then we can move to the next question as to whether our guests might want to introduce something.
Wasn't there one set of minutes that needed a particular group to approve?
From the
I
past?
don't know which one that is.
Yes, it's March 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Are we ready?
Who is the quorum here?
We have sort of a mix.
Kathleen for that one.
Because it was just you and I,
Bill,
Kathleen.
Kathleen, and Keith.
So we need
Okay, so when
Kathleen to
she
that, so
comes-
put that to the end.
Well, they're a quorum of that group,
There's,
but that doesn't
no,
matter.
we have to have
They have
still a
to
quorum
have
of
to-
three.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we can.
Really?
You're the clerk's office?
So we can do that one at the end.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So,
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
second. Do we have a second? I can second.
Mhm.
All right. Those have been approved. So let me ask Assemblyman Honeman, is there something that we can help you with? Is there something you'd like to address with our?
Two things, if possible, and one, the member who is in question or has disclosures every meeting is not present. I know that she's been very busy with recent campaigning. Ms. Demboski routinely makes public disclosure potential conflicts, anything related to the fire department, purchases of vehicles, equipment, supplies, anything to do with the fire department, because her husband is a captain in the Anchorage Fire Department. And I know that I cannot speak for her, however, she has made it publicly known on the record that she would be attending or trying to attempt a meeting of the Ethics Commission to get, if you will, a blanket letter that states that, so that, because every meeting she makes these public disclosures. The ruling of the chair has always been that she doesn't have any conflicts and she participates, that she does. And I believe when Chair Trainee gets back, he might be able to give you more input. But that is something I'd like to make the commission aware of and perhaps have some discussion in advance when Ms. Demboski perhaps would address and specifically ask her.
Yeah, Senator Holman, the couple meetings I've attended, because you're there all the time, I've seen her get up and leave the meeting. I mean, is this something that the current assembly makes her participate?
So far, she makes the disclosures at the beginning of the meeting usually, and she makes a blanket disclosure of each of the agenda items that are listed. And then the chair has to make the ruling generally as the code allows the chair to make the decision. And then it's up to the body if we just agree or disagree. And if we disagree with his ruling, then we vote on it, whether she will or will not participate. So far, the chair has always stated she has no conflict, rule that she has no conflict based on information that's available in the code. And then he says you're to participate. So I don't remember her, with one or two exceptions actually. I mean, members will routinely move in and out of the dais, I guess, during the meeting for several reasons. But
Do we have a mechanism that allows that, or we just make a ruling for that?
I mean, I suppose we could write, if she requested it, we could write her an advisory opinion about that, right? And advisory opinions protect you from notices of complaint, notices of potential violation.
So
they
basically,
get a
they're
greater
coming to
immunity
us
in that area.
with a verbal request for advisory opinion.
That's right. Well, I think she would have to make the request. But yeah, I mean, we could say it in the, I mean, at least that would be the one mechanism we could do. We say, look, in this kind of situation, you need not disclose. And if we said that and that was an advice, then that gives her immunity, so to speak, on that particular issue.
I was going to say, I think we'd have to go a little bit further than just a blanket. I think there'd have to be parameters, and we maybe could even have literally a checklist, administratively involved or spouse administratively involved. All the different ones we look at, and she can just say, she knows what the agenda is by Monday, sometimes Tuesday. She could just check those off, and as long as they're all no, that the blanket waiver would provide. And of course, I'm just thinking out loud that as long as all of these say no, then the ethics board would.
Right, because if there might be a conflict. We don't want to waive something that for the fire department when something might come up. Not that I have any doubt that she would bring it up individually. Anyway.
But if he's not part of the administrative unit
Right.
handling the contract, there's no, so that we
Right.
just come up with 5 or 8 points in a list. And actually, that list would be probably very helpful for the assembly anyway in other matters. If you just go right through that little checklist and hand that to the chair.
Because if the idea is to help streamline the process
You don't have to.
and help be more efficient with your time, which makes a lot of sense. But we don't want to also eliminate the need for a disclosure when the time arises.
And in terms of developing that parameters, I think we could look at, say, the last 10 firefighter items on the agenda and what were some of the questions that could have been asked. So you could develop that checklist relatively quickly. So no, I think that'd be very helpful.
So I just thought maybe perhaps this would be appropriate to bring to the Board of Ethics and perhaps at least for discussion purposes. I do know that Ms. Dombrowski, I can't again speak for her, but I know that she's stated twice on the record now in 2 previous meetings that she intends to approach the board and get a ruling as to whether they could get, I think the chair even advised her at that point, so Mr. Trainee had to take a phone call, but
Okay.
he may have more insight. And then on
I was going to say the other part of that, though, I'm just bringing it to the board, is one is a straight sort of conflict of interest analysis. How important is it that the public is involved in this process, however? So we have a little checklist that goes to the chair. Does the public need to be involved in that at all? Or how does the public need to be involved? I mean, they're not part of the decision making, but how are they informed that this process has happened?
Could it be just something that's on the public agenda?
An acknowledgement of the form that's been filed, or
And it is very time consuming, this disclosure every time.
It's not, I mean, it is part of our role to deal with conflicts, potential conflicts as they come up, but this isn't every meeting occurrence if there's anything to do with the fire department. And usually there's one or multiple items, and so she usually pulls each of those and makes disclosure. In the beginning, it was pulling each and disclosing them as they were accepted. We've gone to where she pulls or notifies the chair at the beginning of the meeting after the whole call and committee hearings, committee meeting reports, and then she'll usually go through the agenda and disclose which of the items are. So it does take a bit more time, and I think it's good that the public knows that she's publicly disclosing this, but at the same time, if it was something that, again, parameters would be a better place.
So
So
this-
something for discussion.
So at this point, we can wait to receive something from Ms. Dombrowski,
Okay.
and then we'll just act on it, I suppose. There's nothing for us to do at this point, I assume, until we're approached with a request to do something, I assume, from her. So I think we're prepared.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
do
as long as we agree that sort of as proof of concept that
Right.
there's something worth requesting, and I think we could do, and then maybe, in terms of, because the public, I think how the public gets informed is an important piece, and so maybe it could be reflected like in the agenda or something like that, under the issues in question, that there's a note, Dombrowski potential conflict has been reviewed by the Board of Ethics, and that maybe the advisory opinion that we issue winds up getting included with meeting minutes or something like that. So the public has some, if nothing else, so the people don't go, hey, wait a minute, she's not even disclosing, I know, and then maybe we start getting frivolous notice of potential as a violation. Hey, she never disclosed this, and that does happen, right? We've had several in the past that was sort of like, oh, so and so didn't disclose this, and so for those reasons alone, it might be worth.
Could the advisory opinion be submitted much like the board's annual report as an aim, and then pulled and, to highlight it on whatever
one
agenda
time.
at one time?
No, that might be enough. Yeah. And the other thing I think that, by the way, that would be helpful about this parameter checklist is that right now, the chair very quickly says, oh, I don't find a conflict.
Right.
Because they've been through it so many times, and so really there's not very much review at that point in time versus a checklist. Where you're not, you'd have to be a much more detailed and helpful conclusion, or
Yeah.
reach a conclusion, so.
Would it solve, if she didn't get a vote, didn't necessarily make the individual's vote in time, but she just abstained from the vote?
No, she can't abstain.
She can't?
Why couldn't there just be a consent agenda item, finding of no conflict from Ms. Domboski by virtue of her husband's employment in the firefighting? And then you'd never have to talk about any of it unless one of the assembly members thought there was something to discuss about.
So are you thinking you consent every single meeting?
Yeah,
The
it would just
consent
be,
item?
an item on the public agenda. The public could see that it was happening every time. And only if someone really thought there was something objectionable would you actually have to pull it off and have a discussion about it. And then we wouldn't be in the position of having a sort of blanket prospective waiver of needing to make the disclosure.
We could have a blanket process of the parameter and to come to that conclusion, but then who's making that determination? The chair?
Well, wouldn't
I mean,
they
the
all
chair
vote
makes
on
that
the-
determination at the meeting.
But don't they all vote on the consent agenda?
Mhm.
And individually, they can pull items out of the consent agenda.
Mhm. That might work. How much, I'm going to say effort is that? Or do
It's
you
it's as
consent
much
items?
effort as the other, so I don't think it's saving an effort to have it there every single time, don't you?
But wouldn't it just appear on the agenda and you'd start the meeting and say, does anyone want to pull anything off the consent agenda that nobody pulled? Amy's potential.
I know, but then to me, that's not showing thoughtful consideration.
Well,
For
I'm not
these.
sure saying you have a perspective go for anything that comes.
No, it would be
But she
much
fills
more
out-
thoughtful.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's this form, and she fills all this out. Someone still makes that determination, whether she fills out that form by Tuesday, well, it has to be early to get on the consent agenda, say Monday at noon. And then Dick says yay, and then you have to put that into the whole, has to go into the I'm not sure
Right.
I'm not sure, Bill, how much you're aware of that whole process, and it has to go
right.
into their packages, and it has to be published by the clerk, and it's last minute, because they're not. So I think, I like your idea, but I think the logistics of it probably.
Well, I'll just give you my perspective because I do the agenda and the minutes. I've had a part in all of that, so I understand the process pretty well, and it would be huge to try to do that. But the thing about it is, as we've been having deep conversations lately because of these conflicts, because it's like, here's my potential conflicts. Oh, you've already disclosed that before, that we just kind of move on. The chair rules that you don't have a conflict. And there actually was a situation in which she probably did have a conflict, but it got ruled so fast and just sort of like snipped off the list really quickly that there doesn't seem to be thoughtful consideration. And then what happens is we're trying to reflect that in the minutes, and we have found ourselves coming up with a phrase that says, after Assembly Member Domboski's review and synopsis, the chair ruled, because we need to show that somebody thought about, some of these conflicts. But I think what the proposal is, or the question is, you have a list of things like, okay, contracts, nope, you have to be recused from that. Purchases, well, you don't have a significant financial interest in that. So those kind of things you are, you can participate. So if this board develops that list and gives, the kind of the rules or the kind of things that you need to be recused from, then that becomes the blanket. And so that she can identify, this is one that we need to bring this up because this is a contract, and I, and then we have a discussion, and then we have, we show thoughtful consideration versus this sort of like, just, oh yeah, your conflicts.
So is there a different contract for the rank and file fire department as opposed to the captains?
No.
Is this the same contract?
The CBA you're talking about. Well, it's sort of interesting what you raised, Lisa, is that you have some things like CBAs, letters of agreement. There's some repetitive things that come up all the time, and couldn't those, unless there was some, and maybe the first part of the list does have some sort of specific things. The second list has, the second part of the form has your generic, you have a financial interest, a family member, they put in those generic factors as well. But then what could we do with this form? Would that be, is that something that would be attached to the minutes, or what do people think happens to this form?
Well, it could, like, if we submitted it the way they do the annual report, it can become an actual archive record. You know, that this happened, and I think they were asking, you know, like, is it yearly, Paul, to do this blanket yearly?
I think so, yes, and it certainly could be acknowledged, you know, that items, you know, the chair could actually report that, you know, items 9B2, 9F7, whatever, on the consent agenda have to deal with fire department using the advisory or the opinion of the Board of Ethics, your rule to have no conflict and you'll participate. At least
One
then it's
statement, yeah.
one statement at
Yeah.
the very beginning and
Yeah.
acknowledge. I mean, it's somewhat done now, but like you say, with no real
Right.
thought or discussion of what are the parameters.
And that way, if somebody wants to go review that record, they can. They can see what thought was put into it. And I think that it'll be a pretty substantial piece of work. So they're going to see that the Board of Ethics, 5 members, have given it a great deal of thought. And now it's on record, and it's a document. So,
You know, one potential problem might be that, you know, we could give her this checklist, but, you know, like a number of those things, you know, like substantial financial interest, you know, they're a little bit gray area-ish. When Amy discloses to the assembly and the assembly's rules that she has no conflict, she has complete immunity. Assembly, the code gives the assembly final authority over its own conflict of interest type issues. If we give her a checklist instead, if she correctly, and says, as long as you meet these criteria, you're good to go and you don't need to disclose. If she correctly goes through the checklist, she's good to go. If she does not, then she would not have the same kind of immunity that she gets when the assembly rules that she doesn't have a conflict. Someone could potentially file a notice of violation, potential violation, saying, hey, she didn't go through the checklist correctly. And again, because some of the criteria are fairly gray area type criteria, you know, she would not be as protected doing it that way. We can't give her a full-on blanket permission. It would have to be tailored to the criteria in the code. So we couldn't give her the full blanket permission, and if she doesn't disclose to the board, to the assembly, and get their permission, the 2 areas where she might get immunity, she'd be sort of like in the middle, filling out this checklist. She'd be having guidance from the board, but she wouldn't have complete immunity. We could say, at most, if you meet these criteria, then you need not disclose.
I'm not taking this as our blessing, we're just providing the form. I'm taking this as the chair reviewing the form and saying, based on that disclosure, which is ever so much more than is being done right now.
And
So
more
I'm looking at it
efficiently.
as the chair's blessing and therefore the immunity. Not our blessing, we're just giving her the form.
So the chair of the assembly.
Right,
Mhm.
that the form is given to the chair, we're not part of it at all. We're just helping by developing the form and saying we agree with the concept. It's
Okay.
better, and so we might
And
have.
so the chair's approval of that form goes on the consent agenda? or
Well,
something?
I mean, that's a suggestion
Yeah,
by Bill.
right.
I think both Lisa and I, who are involved in getting paperwork into, before the assembly, know how hard that process is.
but like Paul was saying, it could be as simple as what Paul said. The chair just reads it into the record every single time, you know,
Right. It becomes
according
part of the
to
minutes.
whatever the document's called. These items I rule that there is no conflict of interest for.
Using the parameters of the discretion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's...
Because one of the things I think that keeps getting left out of the consideration is there's always like no financial. The question that doesn't get asked is the personal interest, you know, and sometimes that's there, even if the financial isn't there. But I don't think that thoughtful consideration is taking place. But this checklist can develop that sort of thing that the chair would have to go through, including personal. Because the question never gets asked, can you perform your duty, what is that phrase, can you put the interest of the
Yeah, public
assembly,
good at the price.
exactly, over, you know, your personal interest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
Well, it certainly would be more efficient and a more thorough process than what's going on now.
Government efficient?
Seems like it.
Just to add some color to what's going on now, is the reason that it causes a lot of disruption is because you have to read each of the things that have been pulled off the consent agenda sort of one by one by one?
We did that at the very beginning, when she first came on the body, and she realized that that's something she should do. So she would pull each agenda item, and then it would be for the purpose of disclosure of conflict. And then she's been fairly efficient about it by trying to pull them all. Sometimes she'll miss one, and that's where the issue becomes, we all have to be a little more, I guess, alert to the agenda items that would potentially, or anything that comes out of the fire department. But sometimes it's a matter of accepting a grant, pass-through grant from state to purchase fire hoses or something. And yes, her husband could end up with one of those hoses on his fire rig that he happened to be working on, but, you know, does it substantially impact her?
It's not a personal thing, it's not financial.
And it could be that they're purchasing a fire truck, well, her husband has nothing to do with the purchase of the fire truck, and it's to handle it purchasing, and it has levels of protect, you know, and maybe he gets to drive in the truck that's ordered and truck, but it's those kind of things that are routinely happening on almost every agenda. And so we thought, I know that Mr. Trainee, he went, but Mr. Trainee and then
Yeah,
Mr.
Coulson and
Bosky.
Mayor.
Yeah. Somebody more important, I think.
Yeah.
But in any event, I know that Mr. Bosky intends to come before this. I thought that I would, since I was here, it might be an appropriate thing to just bring to your attention, and that way you might have some thoughtful discussion.
I'm glad you did this now.
Yeah, and do
We're
we want to
through a lot of
start,
it.
do we want to start developing a list, or should we just wait until, until we're approached by Ms. Dombowski?
I wonder to what degree
Um,
the assembly would be interested in using this form.
Right.
Very much
Generally,
so.
for the members generally,
Very
I
much
mean,
so.
and in which case, we could sort
I
of,
think it would
if we
be-
had a sense that this is the assembly,
Mhm.
because it would be nice to see it not just get used with Ms. Dombowski then, right? I mean, like we say, hey, this is a
Right.
good way for the assembly chair to review conflicts and to make a judgment about them. It'd be kind of nice if it got used for everyone.
Because you do have others that have some conflicts with
Well,
downtown
I-
partnership and some other things.
I will disclose myself, I'm a retired police employee, which I'm covered under the Anchorage Police and Fire Retirement System.
Mhm.
I also have funding coming through the Police and Fire Medical Trust. And so I have disclosed anytime there's an election of an officer, they mail a ballot to your house as a member. And I have decided not to vote while I've been on the body, because I only get one chance to vote. If I voted for them on the ballot, then I shouldn't vote for them on the body to confirm, and vice versa. So I've done that, I've made that disclosure. Is my retirement currently doesn't amount to a substantial amount of my income, but it is an income. And so I usually disclose in those areas. Now, it has nothing to do with any contracts that are either through the CBA and nor any purchases to the police department. I'm not currently working there, and I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee. Does that, do I have an interest? And I think that's fairly clear. It's different between legislative and executive. But yes, I believe it'd be very helpful for all members.
Maybe what we could do is this. The list, we just came up with the list here today, didn't we? That was kind of our idea. Maybe we can get some feedback just to confirm that the Assembly would be interested in
Yes.
getting something like that from us before we start developing it and
And I think
drafting it.
Amy's, though, would be a little bit unique, because to
Mm.
make it efficient, you could tailor it to her
Sure.
situation.
Right.
And maybe once we did that, the other assembly members could say, hey, I think this is a great idea for other people.
Okay.
I hate to see too much of the public process put
Right.
into a form,
Right.
other than it helps the assembly people too to check yes, no, or, what's the interest, or that it is actually coming out. It's very hard on the fly to figure out all the things you should disclose, and the chair, of course, is trying to get the meeting going and say, okay, everything's fine. So if it was sort of a backup document, I still think that public process is important. I think with Amy, it takes up too much time in the public process, that we do need to make that efficient. So
Well-
I would suggest that we do Amy's form first, when it's requested, because that could be very, again, I keep thinking, CBAs, the letters of agreements, the things that routinely come up from the fire department, that can be really tailored for her, that
So-
very quickly figured out.
But there's an issue right on the front right now where you've got a member who might have a conflict because he's part of the downtown partnership,
And I was gonna say,
and you're kind
Assembly
of
Member
discussing that
Flynn
last
has a
night.
ton of stuff.
Yeah.
No, I just say, but let's bite off one
I understand, so I can
thing
see
at
how
a
it can apply to
time.
more than one
Oh,
person. right,
definitely,
yeah.
definitely, yeah.
Well, let's do this then. Let's send a word back to the Assembly. We're very interested in helping out any way we can. We have this idea of a checklist. We can develop it more, but we won't put it on our homework list yet until we get a little bit more word from Ms. Dombowski or get a word back from the Assembly just confirming that that's
And when will the next meeting of the Board of Ethics?
every month. So
Typically, it'll be
It's-
the It'll be the second Wednesday. I may
Second
ask,
Wednesday.
I may ask for an alteration of the date because of some schedule conflict, but
Typically, it's
Yeah.
right around the second Wednesday of the month, barring some sort of.
Well, I'll let Ms. Dombrowski know that if you can help me or remind me, we'll let her know that, because I know last night we were talking about it yet again, and she acknowledged that, yes, she has not yet made an appearance request.
If you could get Assemblymember Dabowski to submit, the advisory opinion, request for advisory opinion, you all can think about this, but it might be something that you may want to call a special meeting to go, or a
Right.
special work
We
session,
can do that.
because I think it's pretty meaty. It's going to be a pretty meaty thing. I can go back all the way from when Amy first came on the assembly and pull, take a look at all of those items that she pulled, and that'll give us a good, sample of the kinds of stuff.
We have a regularly scheduled meeting once a month, but we met 26 times last year. So we have
I know that you guys
special.
meet
We have
more
special
often.
meetings, and I'd hate to start already adding on to those, but we'll do it. I mean, anything that we can do to help, we will
Sure.
do it.
And I think it's something you'd likely address in your regular schedule meeting, not have a special.
Right.
Unless, of course, you need more guidance or information.
Right. But we're happy to do it.
what's interesting is that we are now considering having our own consent agenda. You see, it's on our agenda now, so it's because in order to speed up the meeting.
So I don't want to I'd like to switch
Yeah.
gears just another second, and it's something to take in mind, and that is, we're in transition, a new administration will come in July 1, and I know that there's potential for either one or more employees who are currently employed who may be applying for positions in the new transition, and I just want to make you aware of it. I don't know if there's any issues that need to be addressed or something that needs to be put out, maybe to all municipal workforce or whatever. I think Ethan Berkowitz's campaign is taking applications online from their website. And I don't know what else. So in any event, I mean, there may be that. We all know the executive appointees serve at the pleasure, and generally, having been around the game, usually the chief of staff, if once appointed, will say, submit all your resignations, and if you're interested, submit a resume. And there are some that do it to every exec. There are some that do it just to department heads or that and deputy department. I don't know what your experience has been, but
Just a resignation.
yeah, resignation.
No resume, just resignation.
Yeah.
And then the incoming mayor decides whether or not. So there's a potential for someone to say, there's influence or whatnot. I mean, it could be one of the assembly members too. And I know we're treated as public employees, so just
Okay.
Okay.
make you aware.
Yeah, it might be worth sending out a reminder, because for people leaving the administration, there are some code rules about who they may take an employment with. Remember, it's that thing.
Within a period of time.
There's a certain window of time which they can't work for for someone who is working on, let's say, working on a contract that they had that admitted out of their office or something like, or that they had official decision-making capacity.
Well, an example
about.
would be someone who used to work at the port may not be able to take a job at CH2M Hill monitoring that contract with the port.
Right.
Right. So it might be worth sending a reminder if if there's a potential for a significant number of people leaving City Hall. It might be worth sending out that reminder, because a lot of people just I don't think are aware of that there's that limitation upon their employment.
Very good.
And that's all I had.
Thank you.
Didn't mean to add too much to your agenda.
No, that's good.
No,
Thank you
that's
for
all right.
coming.
Well, actually, this is what we're here for.
Yeah.
If there's looking at school gift disclosure.
Oh yeah, this is the fun stuff.
Was there a lot of them this year?
A lot less. since
A
the
lot
new-
less. That's helped us a lot.
The new
We're still
version.
working out the final procedures, but yeah, it's
Yeah, a lot less.
Yeah, no, the rest of the meeting. Yeah, I've listened to the tapes, and
I
it was.
just wanted to make a comment about the assembly members talking about the conflicts of interest and stuff, and a lot of the, I work for 4 different assembly members, and with each of their committees, we make up the agendas, and we always have that section kind of at the end where it says public,
Audience participation.
yeah, and we have a very close neighbor of mine from the valley, and Mr. Eugene, and he is always at our public safety meetings and several other committees, and he always has a list of how they really screwed up because they didn't give the public and information a chance.
Is
to
it
talk
the
about.
same individual who shows our
Yes.
main occasionally?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he came to our last meeting.
Yeah, and so when you mentioned this possible, like do a meeting about, let's see, public process and, how they say it's important and stuff, that the public would be involved, he would be very excited about that chance.
Oh,
And it's not, I'm not saying, yeah, I'm just saying it's.
No.
he got bored last time and left our meeting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, he often comes to, or at least we'll focus that
Oh,
in and
okay.
say hello.
That's because, see, we don't do anything wrong, so he has nothing
That's
to do.
right.
And he leaves.
That's
He sees it's all going well, and
I've only had to tell him once to not disrupt the meeting, he's gone over his normal time to give him,
Yeah, going
He got
over
mad
time,
and stormed
that's
out.
a good-
It's,
Okay, very good. Is there anything else that we can help you with?
No. And
Very good. Thank you for
I may
coming.
leave here, in a moment.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think, well, no.
Oh,
just
should
let
we
you know.
give Mr. Trainee a chance to?
Yeah, I'll wait for him to.
Okay.
If it's not.
We can go on, and then when Dick
No,
comes
if
in,
we
we can ask him.
Sure. Okay, so on to item number 5 is the disclosure forms.
well, actually, that's part of the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, yes.
So we have no gift disclosure forms this time. And just FYI to you all, I got all the ones that we took care of, I got letters out to all of those.
Oh, these aren't numbered. This has gifts employees.
Yeah.
You've added things to our books.
Yeah, so I tried to make it more easier to use. So there's none in there. But I did get a
Okay.
call back from one of them that we asked that they return the gift card. It was the $100 or so card or something like that. She's a counselor at one of the schools. And she said, you know, I do see now, she goes, our school had the old form, so I didn't know that you couldn't use it and everything. And she goes, I see now on the new form that I submitted that you can't use it. She goes, but in truth, I have used it. And she goes, I will go out and buy another one and return it. And she goes, but she goes, I don't, she wanted me to explain why. And so I went back to the code, you know, the code changed, and really that $50 wasn't going to be in there. And at the last minute, it got put in. And I go, that's a threshold. And I go, we, you know, beyond the $50, we can't start, you know, making all of these exceptions. And I said, the thing is, where there's a gap is ASD training the teachers, because obviously still the schools have the old forms, you know, they don't know. And she's a counselor, and she goes, I do not remember any training, you know, about this new code. And so I sent her the information, and she said, and the second part is, and I said, the second part is, okay, so I was saying training the parents. I go, I'm a parent, and I know that the code says $50 exception, so I give the teachers $50. And she goes, I know it too. She goes, I just happen to know $50. I give $50. I go, so the parents need to know. And she goes, so I really have to give this back to the parent. She goes, what? I'm going to hurt her feelings or what? And she goes, and I said, well, she could return a $50 gift card to you. You know, you're allowed to take that. I said, you know, just explain the code to her. Just tell her that it puts you not in it puts you in an awkward situation versus being showing appreciation. It's actually putting you in an awkward situation. And you know, if she really insists, she goes, I know she's going to insist that I keep the card. I said, if she does, you know, say I can take a $50 card, you know, here's, you know, this back, or you know, say that if you insist I take this, I will have to donate it to PTA or give it away or something, so you're not going to be giving me something. But she did finally, you know, she goes, I really appreciate everything you all are doing. She goes, but I wish that the parents knew, you know, because I hate being in this position. And then she also laughed and said, and I just have to tell you, it's very scary to go to your mailbox and get a letter from the Board of Ethics. So,
wow,
anyway.
how about that?
Yeah.
You guys are scared.
That's good.
Scary.
That's good feedback.
Yeah, it was good. I'm glad she
We may or
called.
may not have dealt with your issue.
Mm.
my issue?
Well, the one that you were here discussing with someone with Bosky.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm taking his place.
No, we've been speaking with Assemblyman Horniman
One, okay.
about, and he mentioned the blanket waiver for Ms. Domboski.
I think she should tell us she has a conflict if it relates to her husband's salary, like the union contract. But every silly thing that comes along, like defibrillators or the fire truck needs a new tire, I don't think she needs to declare a conflict of interest, because that's a general thing that happens to a lot of different people. Now, if it's the salary for her husband's a firefighter, union contract, I can see her. We need to rule on that, but beyond that, it's ridiculous. Every time she has 6 or 7 things that don't amount to hill beans. You know, we're dealing with defibrillators, we're dealing with oxygen masks, we're dealing with all these things firefighters use. She just thinks she has to declare a conflict, and that makes no sense to me.
What we had contemplated doing is getting a little more what we thought of was to come up with a list, like a checklist, that she could go through before each meeting. And then it can be summarily dealt with at the beginning of the meeting each time.
Hand it to you.
Handed to you, and that way it can be dealt with and streamline the process, but while still giving the public notice that the issue has been considered. And so, but before we actually put that on our homework list, we thought we'd hear from her for a request, and also some feedback from the assembly, just to make sure that that's something that would work for you, because we want to make sure to work within something that is procedurally streamlined for
It
you.
can work. I just don't.
Yeah.
Tuesdays are time sensitive. I want the public to know what's going on, but it's also time sensitive meeting. If
Right.
I've got to devote 15 minutes for her to say, well, I've got a conflict of interest on this issue because it relates to firefighters getting boots. No, if it relates to,
We're looking at something less than a minute.
that's fine then.
Mhm.
Do that, please. Because I've only got so much time on a Tuesday night. Like I said, we ran out last night till 11 o'clock.
And the last
Meeting.
meeting.
Huh?
And the meeting before that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I'd appreciate any help from you
Yes.
guys.
Yeah, we thought of a checklist because giving a blanket waiver is not a good idea, but there might be a combination approach here, is that if certain things like equipment for firefighters really is not a conflict of interest, we might be able to do an opinion that sets out these 10 things are not a conflict unless,
That would be great.
so that we
Mhm.
pair those out right away, and the few that are remaining to be
Right.
part of the checklist that then are handed to you, Dick, as the chair, and that way you're really looking at the issue. Right now it's, okay, no, you don't have a conflict,
Right.
versus,
Right.
you know, more of a list.
Right.
So that we try to, make those categories. So let's figure out the ones, Lisa volunteered, she's gonna go back, once we get something from Amy, go back, look at the last 20 firefighter items.
Look
We
like
can-
the oxygen mask. Remember the air packs we had?
Right. What I'll do is I'll just go through every conflict item that she's had, and we'll start making categories of things
That's
that
fine.
it's not.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
would help us tremendously.
Yeah.
I appreciate
No,
it.
and so we'll whatever we can do to help you. we will.
'Cause she wants to be very
Well, she
public
should,
aware of what's
Right.
going on, especially with her
Absolutely.
last election.
Mhm.
She was worried that somebody was going to say, well, you didn't declare conflict on whatever it was.
Mhm.
So I appreciate her wanting to be cognizant of that, but if you guys can help us.
Yes.
And it wouldn't be just her, anybody else has the same issue. This will give us a crown to deal with that.
Mhm. That sounds good.
Thank you guys for your time.
Absolutely. Was there any other issues? Anything else that you wanted to bring
No.
up? Okay.
Anything we can help you with on the assembly?
Right now we're doing great.
Good.
They'd like a triple their salary at the next.
3 times 0 is still
Oh,
0.
We'll get 3 sandwich platters.
I do have a son, my first son, that is a union negotiator, and he will unionize you guys and demand certain benefits.
That's right. I like
Hey,
that.
conflict
Yeah.
of interest there. He did that with the Wasilla Police Department and turned them all into Teamsters.
Then we could buy an ethics truck and drive it.
That's right.
A fake ethics truck.
Well, owned by the ethics union, not by the city.
Ethics Yugo is what
It's not easy, Commissioner. Because what you do is try to figure out personal issues that really get into people's hearts and their backgrounds. And thank you guys for taking this job, because it's not an easy one. Ethics are something that mankind's been dancing around for decades trying to figure it out. Now you guys are at the tip of the spear. And you're right. A letter from the ethics board, that's as bad as getting a letter from the APOC. We just worry about getting letters from IRS. We don't worry about those.
Yeah, well, they only collect if you owe $1 million or more.
Yeah, but when you get the letter, you think you owe $1 million
Yeah,
more.
that's right. All right, thank you both for
Thank you.
coming. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see the forms. Did we say we had no forms? We had some feedback. Where are we at? Number 2? Are we at number
Well,
2 yet?
and there's a little A. You guys
There's an
asked me
A.
to find out who to CC on those letters, and it's Kathleen Plunkett.
Okay,
Easy answer.
good, thank you.
And so she was CC'd.
Okay.
Well, then maybe if Kathleen would attend, she can walk over from the ConocoPhillips building. If we have the discussion, with respect to these disclosure issues that we're still having, like training that didn't happen, that they reasonably delayed that thing was because they wanted training. You can sit wherever your name is, I guess, and just
Well, I can add that as an agenda item if you want, and,
Well, I mean,
and
you were-
invite
Yeah,
her.
you were just telling us that there, the feedback was that I don't know how to train the public.
Well, it might be, the timing might be good on an item like that because it's the end of the school year. So I have a feeling we'll get probably a handful, if not a dozen,
That's true.
exception requests. So maybe we can time all that together and invite Kathleen. Okay? Okay, now we can go to.
Okay, elected Kathleen Plunkett. How convenient. But it is gift disclosure
Oh, I
form.
thought it was Pam, but it is. Oh, it is Kathleen.
Is
Okay.
Kathleen?
Can you read what she wrote there? Looks like it says something about how she was given
United
$100
Way?
tickets for reasons other than her being on the school board.
Yeah, for my day job and volunteer activities, not school board.
Can I ask a question, point of order on this? This is, you've labeled this now the consent agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So if we pull these all separately out to look at them, or do we, so should we?
We still have to look at them all. You still have to review them all, but there might be ones that we pull that aren't necessarily just accepted. There might have some other action that needs to be
Okay,
taken.
I
thought we were-
guess the assembly, they just put on the consent agenda as a,
Yeah, but we really can't do that with this unless you guys are going to review them before you get to the
Yeah.
meeting, and that
understand.
hasn't happened in the past.
Yeah, I mean, if I assumed it was one vote, but we still review them. But if
Yeah,
if we
that's what
want
I'm thinking.
if we want to review them ahead of time and streamline that part, we can talk about that. But I haven't.
Well,
had
I
a
always
chance to
review the
review them.
documents ahead of time, but a lot of times I forget.
I understand.
Oh,
Yeah, especially there's something that happens in that electronic notification.
Well, I come up with an assessment of each one and I email it to Steve. And then.
And Steve responds right away, I'm sure.
Well, I never hear back from him.
Oh.
It's just, I don't understand.
All right. Let's see. So we agree. I'm just going to keep moving unless people want to hold us up.
If you object, you have to say you
Yeah.
object, and then we'll
Well, I suppose we better pull that one, right, and take a look at it.
and
I
actually,
think
Yeah.
if we
one
want,
and
we
then-
can take care of those minutes at any time, Mr. Chair.
Oh, that's right. Since we're here, I was going to do it at the end, but we can do it now. I mean, if we want to. Why don't we wait till the end? Yeah. So, where are we?
Do we have a
Still on
problem? Do we have a problem with Kathleen?
Anybody have a problem?
Terry's
with Kathleen?
moving on, so you're thinking
moving
there's
on.
no problem with Kathleen?
Oh, Kathleen's on. Well, I'm pulling it. I'm pulling it from the consent agenda.
Oh, you're pulling
you
it.
are?
Yeah, we
Okay.
might as well
All right.
talk about it.
Yeah, Terry's pulling it. Okay.
All right.
You can all
Please-
physically pull it if
Please
you want.
dramatically rip it from your binder.
Okay. So then I think everyone should be looking at
Present
the.
economic interest. There's none of those.
I think we have to. Do we have to look at the Miller letter?
Mr. Miller.
Dee and Glinda finalize the Miller letter. All we need is for you guys to say yes.
Give it the green light.
Give it the green light.
Have we reviewed this before
You reviewed it and then you.
and then made
They
changes?
took it
Wanted
away.
to be rewritten now, and so this is the rewrite.
Okay.
I can't remember how substantial the edits were, but. And this was the one, wasn't it, Terry, that you started off with, or we
Yes.
wanted to make sure that just the timing of the different things.
It is.
It's at the
right-
beginning.
Yeah,
Beginning
when you go to
of
present
orange.
economic interest, it's right after the bright orange divider.
And if you approve this letter, then from here on out, you have to say, that one gets a Miller letter. Or that one gets a
This is
Miller
a Miller
letter.
letter.
I guess it's forever going to be known as a Miller letter.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this. We were clarifying for him so he doesn't just simply roll over this issue. We commend his candor. And then we're including the relevant code section. I see. Oh, here are my notes.
Oh, it's
There we
right
go.
at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, I'm ready to move on. Who else wants to, anybody else want to discuss this?
Is this in the consent agenda?
Do we want
Yes.
to pull this too?
Okay, no, don't need to put it.
Okay, let's roll.
So when you look at these present economic interest forms,
Mhm.
say if you want them to receive a Miller letter
Okay.
in addition to pulling it.
I see.
Or I guess you can pull it for a Miller letter.
These are all of them.
There's a
that
bunch
you've
of them.
received.
There's a little less than
I
100.
guess we asked for them.
100.
You did. There's probably about 70.
Did you go through them?
I accepted them and saved them and reproduced them. I didn't look at any of them.
Like we do with some of those gift disclosures, or the ones where we have a problem go up front.
I can't do that. I mean, do you really want me to make that?
Well, you have with the disclosure, the gift disclosure letters.
Oh, these are a little bit more complicated. I mean, the
This is
ones.
something that we could maybe, if Glenda's not here, we could have Claudia do
Mm.
that.
That'd be nice.
No,
I could give her the
Just
packet
a-
early and she could.
She's administrative hearing officer, but that position does not currently have enough work.
Mm.
And that's why we decided to bring her in for a second attorney on this board. And so she literally has the time to do some of this.
Okay.
Because what she could do is pull the ones that have a conflict
Mm-hmm.
and then put them up front.
Have a conflict, and then the next one, gray areas. right?
Exactly.
Or those two areas, the ones that pretty clearly don't.
Like this, right,
Okay.
this one here, Mr. Kiley. I'm just looking at through the stack to see who checked yes.
Well, as an example, Dave Nyman.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite an explanation. I'm reading that from
Mhm.
now.
I like to be considered a Mr. Danger for
Carlos Danger.
I guess I could pull out the neithers and then give
Just-
the others to Glenda.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean,
Right.
Lisa, I think you have way.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Let Glenda do it. And you know, Glenda is very, very conservative and very detail oriented. So she's
Mhm.
a perfect person for this job. So,
Okay.
Stuart Radner thinks we're wasting his time.
I'll let go and let Glenda.
Did you say that? What's it?
Because, seriously? Please explain how anyone could have a personal or financial interest in the actions of the Senior Advisory Commission different from those from the public and work. I don't object to spending time with benefit communities. I object to wasting time.
Wait, who is that?
Where is that?
What's the guy's name? Because he works for Ingleton.
Yeah.
Mawson, or
Which
it's
one
not
is it?
Mawson anymore, but Ingleton
Stuart
Fitzgerald.
Radner. It's not.
Oh.
Raider?
Raider.
That man doesn't need to be appointed anymore. To his
Maybe he needs to be pulled and given a Miller
I
letter
think
to
he
show
should be getting
him
a
what.
Miller letter. Yeah.
in the teacher's district.
Could we come up with a more extensive form that he has to fill out?
Well, at least 10 pages.
It'll be a Raider form.
Raider. Oh yeah, Miller letter and a Raider form. Okay, this one.
Well,
We can thank you member. What is the hand board of commission? Jane?
That's the home and
Housing.
yeah, housing. We've had some interesting discussions with.
It's in the neighborhood. Something.
Well, I might
Development.
then, well, subject, I have some questions about Nelson, who declares a conflict with Alaska Legal Services, just because I don't know all the acronyms.
that's really funny. He spelled losing wrong.
Yeah. Losing some money.
Oh yeah, Lisa, if you don't mind, could you send Raiders back? Because the date confirmed and term ending.
That's right,
has
it's empty.
not been filled out.
Uh-huh.
Is he seriously getting a Miller letter, right?
Well, he
You
should get a
tell
Miller,
me.
but we can't give him the Miller letter until his form's been appropriately and fully filled out.
You want to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I want to do it.
Here, you're gonna waste your time here.
Yeah, here you go.
Of course, we have to be careful because there's maybe others that haven't been filled it out.
As far as these go, do we want to pull from the consent agenda those that have? Because we're just going through these. I assume that right now I've just got my thumb on some of these that have a yes. Without discussing them.
I say if, when you see it, don't put your thumb on it, just say pull this one
Okay,
for a
pull
Miller
it.
letter. I mean, we're not even gonna take a vote on
Okay.
it. If you say it, well, I'll do it.
All right, so we're on. So we mentioned Nyman, right? Kylie, Nyman, and Rader, Nelson.
I gotta write, I can't do
Yep.
this. Lyman, Kylie,
It's Kiley. That's right.
okay,
And then
Raider.
Raider, and then I.
Stuart Rader?
Mm-hmm. Do you know him?
No, but you're just gonna do it because of the,
Oh, I don't know.
Well, he wants to, he doesn't
I-
understand, so the
Oh.
Miller
Yeah,
letter
he
will
doesn't
help
understand his
clarify.
he doesn't understand the process clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have one with the wrong form. It's the form is
Mr.
7
Nyman.
years old.
I'm sorry.
Lyman, Kylie, Raider.
Patrice
Where was
Case.
It's in the last one,
I?
after Raider,
Yeah, I just had one there. Oh, Nelson.
Nelson.
It looks like Nikki or it's Nelson. Yeah, this is an old form. Does it matter?
No.
Brady's.
There's another old form. I don't care. Those will get filtered out
Yeah,
over
they
time.
will.
that says none, doesn't it?
Because none is none, I guess.
The bottom, doesn't it say none? Oh, no, that's different.
No,
There
Judy
was a
Brady.
couple
Judy
of-
Brady
What's
checked
this?
both
She
boxes.
checked both.
I know her.
Donald McCann. I don't know what this means.
Yeah, there's another double.
Is anybody else looking at this? What's the last name? I can't read
McCann.
it. McCann.
McCann.
Yeah, Donald Lee.
On the left side, McCann.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's it, maybe I already passed it. Okay, here it is. So they checked both. So should I just pull it and send them a
Mm.
Miller letter and have them refill it out and actually pick just one?
Are you sending these letters to anybody who says they have an economic interest?
Know anyone that somebody pulls?
David,
Well,
or ones that you want more information on,
originally I thought of pulling them so we can at least look at them.
or?
Okay.
I don't know that we need to send a letter yet. Some of them we may just simply decide that they don't need.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's
issue.
what I was questioning.
I just want to get through this chunk and then pull those
Okay.
that have answered yes, and then we
Okay.
can figure out whether to send them a letter. But I'm trying to at least streamline this part of the
Okay.
consent agenda. And this one here, I'm almost tempted to recommend that we just send it back to Mr. McCann to refill it out with a little highlighter, like what is it?
Okay.
Because we don't know what that means, unless someone else has a different idea. Are there any others? Mr. Powell owns some hangers. Judy touches class. It sounds like he just. Let's see. We can talk about these later. Am I missing?
Did you get Webb?
Yes, Bill Webb.
Although I don't think there's conflict, we discussed it.
Right. Okay. That's what I show. Did I miss any? Excuse me.
Well, this is the real Albert Mills Farm,
And then here's it looks like
Dr. Dave Nyman.
this is your checklist on who has filed and who we're missing, is that right? I'm looking right
Yeah.
now at the compliance reports. What's the next step from here? Just keep track, is that the concept?
What's
You're just
happening
keeping
is,
track of these
is
people?
I need to, if you look at mine, you know, I told you about the APOC thing. We're not going to do the assembly members.
Right.
But I need to follow up with, what's her name? Not Teresa Williams, Monica Whedon, who got the board of, she staffs the Board of Equalization, and get her to get me some more forms. And then I need to, the commission's in-house, so I just got to go downstairs and get them to fill out theirs. So I just have been too busy. But then with the next one, Stephanie McSwain, this is all of the ones, we finally put this together that she needs to get, and you'll see,
Okay.
we got quite a few of them, but not even the majority.
No,
So
that's true.
that's still in works.
But
Okay.
you know, on hers, there are whole boards, either they have them or they don't.
It looks like it,
That's
that's
the
right.
staffer's responsibility, whoever's staffing these boards. And for instance,
Solid
I
waste.
just did the bidding review board, just at 2 different hearings for them in the last 2 weeks. So plenty of opportunity, but the staffer, so I will help work with that, because Stephanie should be able to, I don't know if she doesn't go to that meeting, for instance, but she should be tied into the person from purchasing who does staff that meeting.
Like
So
planning
I-
and zoning, there's none.
Yeah, so maybe what I
Right.
can do is meet with
Planning board.
Stephanie and find out who in fact who's the person that goes to each of these meetings, what's their phone number, and I think we can get that solved that way, because for sure Stephanie is not going to the ones I'm familiar with, the Animal Control Board either, she doesn't go there.
Well, and what she's done is, because she copied me on all the emails, she sent it to the staff members of each of the boards an email to collect them. And then when I gave her this list showing where she was, then I got CCC'd on a bunch of more of the emails going out again saying, hey, I've already told you about this. There's a deadline. It's way past it. You need to get these in. So she's tickling the staff
Okay,
support.
So those emails will demonstrate who's the staff person anyway. Okay. Yeah, because it's whole boards, it's not
Yeah.
Are the chairs of the various boards now receiving all the board members' disclosures? So we talked about one point that if you are a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission and you disclose your conflict to the Board of Ethics, the other members of the Zoning Commission never put on alert by the disclosure to us, right? And so we mentioned a long time ago, it might be helpful to copy back to the chair of the commission those disclosures so that they're all policing themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. If
Yeah.
you don't know what your own board members, I have no idea, for instance, what anybody here has disclosed. And, that's probably a good point. Yeah, but that staffer keeps those, and maybe they're floated around at one meeting,
Yeah.
so everybody knows what they are. So that's a good point.
I feel like the disclosure function serves more of a direct purpose that the board itself knows.
Exactly.
Because I guess I was just assuming the staff person is keeping, because they're sending it to me electronically,
Yeah, no, so they have
and
them.
that they have them.
But that should be an agenda item. The
Yeah.
first meeting is to get them, and the second meeting, or if they have it, Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Lisa, maybe you and I can think of how to incorporate that into with Stephanie
Okay.
and Teresa, because I think that's excellent. Oh, yeah, if the clerk's the only one who knows what they are.
Right.
This is the reduced list, because I do recall that the mayor got rid of several commissions.
Well, there's still some. A bunch on the way, I think there's items. It's interesting to know.
The cocktail party at the library.
So the consent
Yeah,
agenda is
can't
just
come in
those
until after
colored
4.
tabs.
Mhm.
So once
Right.
you've gone through all those colored tabs.
Well, I'm looking at the notice of intent to respond. I'm looking at Mr. Abubaid. Any insight, any reason to think that there's an issue here? He's an employee of the Building Safety and Plan Review and Association for Real Estate Department. I don't know. Ron Thompson. Oh, so Ron signed it. And no potential conflict exists. Okay. Any reason that we need to spend more time on this? Okay.
Hartford property is something that's published
It's in the newspaper.
publicly, so that everybody can have an opportunity. People, I would hope they have a equal opportunity to bid.
Mhm. Okay. So the last issue on the consent agenda is the. Oh, I see.
That should be
That's
it.
it. Okay.
Except
so
that we can approve the consent agenda and then we'll deal with these exceptions.
So that's right. So, any objections to approving the consent agenda after pulling those conflicts or the disclosure forms that we agreed to earlier? Hearing no objections, approved.
Well, that was efficient.
Do you think so?
No, I'm being ironic.
I know. I know, you usually are.
But it
But-
will be
but-
when we get Glenda to actually pull those items.
Yes,
Essentially
and
is
when-
what she's
and
doing.
when we
Well,
start-
we're not going to
and
get the influx like this most of the time.
That's right. That's right.
So,
Well, I don't know because we're not even
Right.
halfway there.
I'm hoping it'll be more efficient.
Well, if we just sort of highlight to ourselves that we've got this consent agenda function, if we could review the consent agenda stuff before the meeting, then it's super fast, right? I mean, but
Yeah,
if we're,
it would.
and maybe we should just sort of like make an existential choice right now about how we want to live out being on the board. if we look at our heart of hearts and we say, I'm never going to look at this stuff before the meeting,
Right.
then we probably shouldn't do the consent
We have to
agenda.
do a serious
If we're willing to
introspection.
make the commitment that, yeah, I will at least try to look at this stuff ahead of time, then the consent agenda is probably a good idea.
What if we can make a suggestion that the first 15 minutes, people have the time to look at it, and getting all the stuff, printing it out, is difficult.
Mhm.
But we all know that we all do it when we first come here. And I'm not just saying, first 10 or 15 minutes, you're eating lunch, and you're looking at the consent agenda.
That's fair.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think
yeah.
part of it is, that's right. I don't want to print all these documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
that's,
we're not recording Lisa eating chips the whole time.
that's right, exactly.
You notice I
listened to some
haven't
past
eaten
meetings,
them
that's
because
all you
I
hear.
can
It's like,
hear it.
It's all Lisa.
It's all Lisa. It's just-
Okay, that's good.
And then people who have read them, they come and say that it doesn't matter.
The as far as the Assembly Ethics and Elections Committee, I cannot make this meeting on May 27th. Can somebody else from? It's not required, but it'd be nice. I've been going to the meetings before.
Is that Wednesday?
It's a Wednesday.
I can go to that one.
It's 2 weeks from today, I believe. And I've been making an effort. We've been going, but this one I cannot.
Yeah, I
So
can-
if someone else
Terry,
can do
I'll
that.
remind you,
If,
Terry.
if you don't mind, you can send me an email to remind me.
Okay. Item number 7.
Okay, we
unfinished
can't
business.
we can't keep going on because we
Why?
approved the consent agenda, but we
Yeah,
have to
go
deal
back
with
and
these
get
pulled
this
Oh
items.
gosh. Every time I want to keep going.
Yeah,
cracks the
so
whip.
that's what it's like.
Okay, so Nyman, what do you guys? Because you guys were saying probably some of them aren't a problem. Nyman,
Yeah, before we send the Miller letter, is that the idea?
is everybody familiar with Nyman? My company is a subcontractor to other engineering companies that may propose on MOA term contracts and conduct business with MOA departments. I am presently unaware of any situation that would cause me to be or family members to have a personal or financial interest different from those of the public. However, the possibility exists that such a conflict could arise, and if so, I will promptly disclose such a conflict, something in
Dave.
economic interest.
I vote for Miller letter.
Miller letter? Okay. Miller.
Okay.
Okay, the next one would be Kylie, Daniel Kylie, and it says, I am a licensed healthcare provider and a business owner.
What's he looking to join?
He is in the HHSC, Health and Human Services Commission.
I may vote for a Miller letter for all of these. And all it says is,
It's just saying, here's the
here are the
deal.
rules.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the next one is Raider, and you all know seriously what Raider's issue is, so.
I actually think a Miller letter
Miller
is
letter?
appropriate for him also, unless you feel otherwise.
What does
Well,
the
the
senior?
Miller letter says thank you for
Yeah.
the candor and disclosing.
Yeah, I know that's
What
true.
said any of that
I
stuff.
was going to say, maybe that one maybe deserves an extra thought from
Yeah, we can
Glenda
just
or
add,
myself.
add XOXO at the
Let's go
bottom.
one side, add an extra thought. It's actually fairly amazing to get a letter like this to me all the time.
Okay, I will send that to you,
Yeah.
Glenda.
Yeah.
When will Glenda be back?
I think she's just going to leave.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so Nelson, he says ALSC receives funding from CBDB public services dollars, and I am a board member uncompensated of something.
Rule cap.
Roll cap is a grantee of the MOA.
CB, whatever that is, BD is the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is big federal dollars that may have some tie to housing, which is maybe why they just closed it.
I thought it was a bar where people play bands in New York City. Right. Okay. This
They
yours
closed
is
it
much.
down, it's just no fun.
I think we may have to have a no acronym policy.
All right. I'm actually, here I was wanting to go through each one, but I think you're right. Miller letters seem to be appropriate for a lot of these because what they're saying essentially is, I don't know, but there could be. Well,
So moved.
Okay, all Miller.
Let's just do
Well,
it.
not all Miller, because McCann.
Oh.
McCann.
Oh, that's right. No,
That's right.
you're right. McCann, I would say send the letter
Which?
back.
Just
and
the
ask
form.
him.
Send McCann something about the law of non-contradiction. Ask them to square that out for us.
And to contact you at his earliest convenience.
No, you said Howell. I found it Brittany
Powell.
Howell.
Powell.
Oh, Powell.
Powell.
Okay.
Lisa.
I know, I'm sorry. Not efficient. Okay, Powell. Okay.
Powell.
All Millers.
All Millers.
Okay, now we can move on to
All right.
7.
Can we move on
Hey.
to 7 now? All right.
Where I thought we would get.
Ridiculously busy.
No, this isn't. Yeah, this is where I thought we'd get bogged down, but we don't have time to get bogged.
How are we doing on time?
Well, that's it. Time's up.
Oh, we're
Motion
good.
to
We got
adjourn.
45 minutes.
Oh.
So wait.
It wasn't adjournment on the consent agenda.
Oh, notice of potential violation, 2014-2. Updates. Do we have to go to any special sessions, executive?
Well, let's read this one out. Number 1. So we're talking about the deadline is today, actually. And so I think we need an update from D.
That's right.
Yeah,
This is the ethics training from the that agreement that we had, right?
So this is a direct quote from, it says, they are to develop municipal ethics training materials for implementation of ethics training and distribution to local members of the IAFF Local 1264. These materials shall be provided to the Municipal Board of Ethics within 90 days and are subject to the board's approval, and that is today, May 13th.
Okay. And they are waiting for us, I mean, they've shifted the responsibility. Hey, we gave you the union stuff, you don't like it, will someone work with us on a PowerPoint? Which is what we thought would probably happen at the very beginning, and I just haven't done that. So I think, because that's not accomplishing what we
But
want.
isn't that a cop-out on their part? The code is pretty clear.
Well,
They're not doing the work that they're supposed to do, that they're paid.
we got. I kind of feel like we got watered down, and now we're just flapping in the wind. I don't.
You know, the problem was the ethics code portion that they violated, they had to have read that 15 times to figure out where to fall on that line. So training wouldn't have helped that at all at the beginning.
No, because it's very deliberate.
So I guess I'm sort of, I mean, we can do training over there, but it's the very simplistic code stuff. We did, I believe now there's a firefighter ethics person, but again, you know, for a while there when we were so busy, the idea of ethics officers in a given area was really a good idea. And geez, they know more, like the police ethics officer really knows more about police operations when you're evaluating some of the ethics questions. But having been on this board now for 6 years, yeah, but we know so much more because you have to keep, you know, we've learned about experience. And do they really have that experience? Is that such a great idea? So part of it was, should the firefighters, should that area have their own ethics officer? I think it's hard to train people up unless they are confronted with the type of challenges we are all the time. So I'm less enthusiastic, especially now that Glenn has come on. There's a second person to help do all this. So does that mean we just give them the plain old simple PowerPoint, which says, hey, here's this, here's this, here's that? They never have solved this particular problem. I don't think that the people that were involved with this violation are going to teach the political activity section with some real oversight or, you know. So at this point, I'm just not sure what to do, I guess. Simple ethics training can certainly be provided. I don't see how having the union involved is going to really help in that regard. Yeah, so I think it has been watered down so much. Unless we got them, if whoever met with them and said, okay, here's your PowerPoint, what are some of your other questions? Maybe we could make it a more lively PowerPoint. I mean, the PowerPoint's just your basics, but here are some real questions. Come up with 10 interactive situations or something, and then you guys go forth and do the training. Certainly they command more respect over there than an ethics officer from the city would. The union folk. So.
Is
Well,
now
okay.
the time to do that executive session? Because it's.
Sure.
Well, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to do is ask to go to executive session. It's partly to discuss this in another issue that came up just within the last month. I don't feel that it should be recorded, however.
Well, can you give a little bit more basis of why you don't? What's the basis for going into executive? Does it involve someone's reputation, integrity?
We're talking about a large group and I think maybe a violation, or at least the appearance. It doesn't look, doesn't smell, doesn't, there's some, and it's also, I'd like to talk a little bit about potential violation 214-2 and how it was addressed.
So it has to do with a potential violation.
Yes.
Okay. I think on that basis, you could go into executive session. Executive session.
All right. No objection. Okay.